Hello, everybody. Corona Namaste again. I'm back. Dr. K.K. Agarwal, the editor of MedTalk, President Heartcare Foundation of India and SIMAO. This is the second only total virtual conference since 12 o'clock. We have been having sessions, and this is the last session. Normally, in a last session, you have attendance which is less than 10%, but this session is going to have the same attendance. All our programs, all our sessions are having a large number of people who are attending. So I have with me Dr. Nandita Palshetkar. She is the professor of OB/GYN at D.Y. Patil Medical College, Navi, Mumbai. She is a teacher for super specialty. She has been the president of FOXY. She is a director of 9 Bloom IVF centers. You can imagine that 9 Bloom IVF centers. And she has been a president of many organizations, more than 150 chapters, received 18 awards, 61 orations, more than 1,000 talks. And I'm going to ask her to present her views on gynecological practice post-lockdown with 2 preliminary comments to one, what is the situation of Bombay now, number 1, because that's a hot spot as far as India is concerned. And second thing is that there was a journalist who talked to me, and he said that 9 months from now, the gynecologists are going to have a boom in their practice because all the people are there at home and they are going to manufacture babies which are going to come back after 9 months. So all gynecologists will have a boom in their practice 9 months from now. I present to you Dr. Nandita.
Thank you, Dr. Agarwal. So I'm the Akhri batsman in your innings, and I think it's been wonderful. I've joined actually as a outsider. I just listened to the whole thing. It was really amazing. And I think what we need to understand is Bombay is going like 10,000 plus cases, 500 plus deaths. I think we are all in a real cauldron, and our chief minister today has said that the lockdown will be extended. So Bombay is definitely under lockdown. But there are certain differences between Bombay and the rest of the country is that Bombay, the municipality, has actually asked us to resume elective work. And I think then this discussion becomes really, really important because post-lockdown or in Bombay as it is right now, we are all working and we have to start regular work. So I think what is important for OB/GYNs is we've been working throughout, we've been doing deliveries, etc. But there has been a restricted work, like we are only doing emergency care. So what will happen once the lockdown is over? I think what everybody needs to understand is that the pandemic is here for a short while, maybe 6 months to 1 year, and then we'll probably get back to normal once the vaccine comes. But till then, we have to change our lifestyle. We have to change the way we think, the way we work, and those are some of the changes that we will have to include in our practice. For example, telehealth. I think telemedicine is going to be the backbone of our practice even in future. In fact, it was as, early in the 73 when the Sony Walkman were introduced. And that's the time, it was the beginning of the iPad, which is there today, the iPhones, the music which you hear, the Bluetooth technology, etc., has really come and to help us. So let us now look at our practice. So we are going to do all the practice, plus we need to remember that telemedicine should be used. So the key principles of starting any practice in any field, we have to remember that we have to limit the entry of infection into our clinics. It's very, very important. And isolate a symptomatic patient and protect our healthcare workers. This is extremely important where, when you want to start your practice after lockdown. I think the main part is screening. The first part of it is really screening, and screening is by 3 things. We have to be vigilant for the symptoms. So you have to ask whether the patient has any cough, cold, fever, etc. We have to triage on the telephone. In Bombay, what I'm doing is I first speak to the patient, ask them certain questions, and I have this questionnaire on what you should ask a patient, which is at the end of my talk. I'll definitely ask Dr. Agarwal to mail it to all of you. And those are the questions that you should ask on the phone before the patient comes to you. And of course, whichever city you're in, you have to follow the guidelines that are there. Like as I told you, in Bombay, we are told to start all our clinics and start practice. So let's come to the triage. Now, triage on the phone or message. Telephone is very, very important. What I normally do in my practice is that when a patient wants to come and see me, first I will talk to them on the phone. I will see that all their reports are sent to me electronically, so that we don't have to handle any things, like papers, etc., which will be transferred from the patient to us. So everything should be done electronically. If the patient, there are different scenarios in the triage, scenario 1, 2, 3, which I will talk about, and accordingly we will guide the patient. Then supposing at the clinic or the hospital, at the entry of my clinic, there is again a triage station where they are again asked for the different questions, and then the person at that particular desk should be wearing, a physical barrier so that they are protected against the patient. And also the triage protocol for the emergency, I will talk about it. All right. So if you triage the patient, as I said, there will be scenario 1, scenario 2, and scenario 3. The scenario 1 is where the patients and the partners are asymptomatic. Remember, I'm talking even of ART, IVF, where we have to examine the husband also. So scenario 1 is where absolutely asymptomatic, the triage questionnaire is given and you are certain. So this patient is absolutely clear. The second one is where there may be mild or non-specific symptoms, and triage potentially could be positive. So then you should do the test. Of course, we don't have the antibodies in our country right now, but soon they will be available, and those are the tests that you can do, or even you can do the COVID testing. And if they are negative, they come into scenario 2, and those patients which are positive are totally in the scenario 3. So obviously scenario 1 is the patients which you can take and do your consulting, do your procedures, etc. Scenario 2, after the testing, they can be taken into your clinics and into hospitals. And scenario 3, obviously they refer to COVID hospitals or for self-isolation, because now the rules that are coming out is that if the patient has mild symptoms, does not need hospitalization, isolation can be done at home. For the staff, triaging for the staff is also very important. This is something that I want to bring to the notice of all the consultants, that again, the triage questionnaire is the same, and you must also triage your staff. So again, it is scenario 1, scenario 2, and scenario 3, where asymptomatic are completely in the first part. The mild or non-specific symptoms, you must test them. And if they test negative, wait for 7 days and ask them to come in. Specific symptoms of a previous COVID test is positive, obviously you quarantine these health workers. So these are some of the things that we must be careful about. I think managing clinics and consulting rooms outside, before the patient enters, you should see that you have, first of all, you should have adequate space. If you don't have space, please space out your patients. So single entry point with screening. As I said, a telephonic screening before, and then at the entrance, there should be screening. There is a self-declaration form by the patient that I have not done all these things. There are very good questions on the triage list. Like even some things like, have you gone for parties? Have you gone for gatherings which are more? So I think we need to put all these things into space. Then protective gear for the staff, strict social distancing, and if possible, a hand washing facility outside the hospital. That would be something really nice, so that the patient washes and comes in. Once they are inside, I think we have to restrict the OPD time, make it 15 minutes, no accompanying persons in the consulting rooms. Patients are placed at 1 meter distances if possible. And whenever you examine a patient, the sheets, use disposable sheets. Even disposing of the sheets is very important. They have to be properly disposed. And the table should be cleaned afterwards. Do not, as I said before, also do not touch the patient documents, request for pictures in advance, and if possible, avoid ACs. Or today, there are a lot of filters which we can put in the air conditioners, like virucidal filters, using the technology of ionization, plasma, etc. And those can be used in our clinics as well as in the OTs. So protective gear, I think we must remember that wherever we are, hand hygiene is a must. Then I heard the psychiatrist saying in the morning, I mean, in the afternoon session, Dr. K.K. Agarwal was also saying, some of the people are OCD about washing hands. So I think what he said was really nice, that hand hygiene is a must, but you must, use it as and when it's required. Then don the protective gear based on the role in patient management and duration of exposure. I think this is very important because PPEs are scant and we need to decide when to wear it. Use protective gear based on place of practice, of course. The high risk is, N95 mask and the full PPE. I don't want to go into details. I think you've heard a lot. Medium risk patients, N95 mask, disposable gowns, nitrite or latex gloves, goggles, hair and shoe covers are recommended. And low risk, only surgical masks. But I think in a healthcare worker or in our clinics, I agree with Dr. K.K. Agarwal when he said that, you need a mask, you should have a hair cover, and you should have shoe covers and goggles or some kind of a protective eye care. So this is very important depending on which situation, which area you're in. And this is a very beautiful statement in April 2020, 29th April it was released. It was a joint statement on reintroduction of hospital and office-based procedures in the COVID-19 climate. And it really, tells you very beautifully. You divide the patients into tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and tier 4. Tier 1 is this surgery can be delayed beyond 12 weeks. It's not urgent. Tier 2 is delayed by 4 to 12 weeks, but not beyond that because it will affect the quality of life, etc. And tier 3 is delayed up to 4 weeks, but not beyond that. And of course, tier 4 is the surgery that cannot be delayed at all, like ectopic pregnancies, torsions, etc. And also that was the office based, okay, that was the office based procedures, gynec procedures which are there, like endometrial biopsy, etc., office hysteroscopy, vulvar biopsy, all these cases. And let's go to the surgical part now. What about hysterectomies? What about myomectomies, etc.? So again, this is a beautiful classification which is there on sgo.org. And it says tier 1 is low acuity surgery. That's a healthy patient. 1A is always healthy patient. So 1A is low acuity. That means what? Benign appearing adnexal mass, which is asymptomatic. Hysterectomy without anemia and very stable symptoms. So you can postpone it. So these are the safe surgeries. Then tier B is the same safe surgery, but patient has comorbidities. Then tier 2 is immediate acuity. 2A and 2B. So I think this way, if we are able to classify our surgeries and then perform them depending on the emergency, and we can space them out. And I think the previous speaker was talking, Dr. Kriplani was talking about how we need 1 hour to don and off the PPE. So we will have to keep that in mind, that we will have to clean our OTs, clean the surfaces, and then take in the next patient. And of course, general anesthesia, most of the anesthetists are really worried about giving GA. So most of the procedures, that all the recommendations that have come is that if you can do it under local or spinal, it would be good. So we have to wait till we find some more protective mechanism for our anesthetists. In some parts of Maharashtra, they're using, like a acrylic box covering the patient, and where the anesthetists can work through it. But of course, it's not foolproof. It's not safe, but direct inhalation is definitely avoided, and with the suction attached to that, so whatever gases are eliminated are sucked out into a different container. So this is a care that we can take. And most of the time, a lot of questions are that supposing I'm doing a clinic and one of the patient turns positive, then what do you do? So what you can do is you can fumigate the center through surface cleaning with 1% sodium hypochlorite. Center can be closed, but you don't need to close it for more than 24 hours. And remember, all the staff and patients not in contact with the positive patient should have, there's no problem. These are the dialysis center, which were given to us by the Municipal Commissioner of Mumbai. And I think they are fantastic for any center. So any healthcare workers, doctors, nurses, technicians with full PPE exposed to the patient need not be quarantined or tested unless they develop symptoms. I think these are something really practical instructions which they've given. Then the healthcare workers without PPE coming in contact with COVID-19 positive patients, they should be tested and they should be quarantined. Those without symptoms for the 7-day can rejoin work immediately, but those who develop symptoms should be tested on 7th day and treated as positive patients. Then the patients at the center, while the patient is sitting, other people can be sitting with the positive patient. So the patients at that center who came in touch with the positive patient should be tested, and patients who test positive should obviously be guided to COVID-19 hospitals. So if you're not in protective gear, I think these are the precautions that you can take. And this is my last slide, which is the ART triage questionnaire, which we've prepared, but I think it's applicable across the board. And even the ASRM has now suggested that we should start practice. We should get on to patients because, infertility is not emergency, but you can't treat them. There are lots of patients who have low ovarian reserve, who have a very low sperm count, all these kind of patients, or cancer therapy patients who want to preserve their fertility. They definitely need treatment ASAP, and we need to get used to it. Secondly, form teams at your hospital. The first team works for 7 days. Actually, 15 days is what we are planning. First team works for 15 days, they go home, and the second team comes in. So these are the ways in which you can protect your nursing home. So thank you very much, and I hope it was informative. Thank you, Dr. Agarwal, for giving me this opportunity for coming on this forum and talking to all the doctors.
So let's have few questions with that. When it comes to, I'm talking about now practicing gynecologists and practicing fertility specialists and practicing GPs who are practicing women practice with that. And now the government says you can treat patients at home. So will antenatal care come into mild? Antenatal care with mild cases, can they be treated at home under the new policy?
I think that's fantastic because what a lot of countries are doing is they don't give any drugs to antenatal patients if they have mild symptoms. So the course of the disease is tracked in the house. You have a temperature, you can take their pulse, BP, and watch them for the symptoms of breathlessness, etc., and leave them at home to be isolated. I think it's a wonderful way to treat pregnant women, because especially in a COVID hospital, you're with all the other patients. Sometimes you don't have a separate room and all. It becomes very difficult for pregnant women. So most of the pregnant women don't want to come forward. But now with this new directive, I think it'll be fantastic. Also, I forgot to talk about the antenatal care, but antenatal care can be done, and our FOXI guidelines do say that we need only 3 visits. And I feel the telemedicine, in the olden days, when 25 years ago I was a student, I was taught to take the fundal height with a tape measure. We didn't have so many sonographies, etc. So I think we need to teach that to our patients so that they can measure the fundal height every 2 weeks and tell us, and we know that the baby is growing well. So these can be some of the changes that we can do. So you don't need to give medications for mild cases of COVID in pregnancy. I think it's better to withhold the medicine.
So we don't have any evidence today that in the first 3 months, people who have got COVID because they have not yet delivered. So we still don't have we don't have any data what will happen if COVID happens into the first.
The first 3 months.
So at this moment, therefore, should people marry? Should they go ahead with their conception? Should they postpone that till the evidence is there because we don't know whether it is going to behave like rubella or not. So therefore, what should happen?
That's a major debate that is going on, Dr. K.K. Agarwal, in all our scientific forums. That are you telling people not to marry, not to have babies? No, you're not. We are not telling them that at the moment. But we are telling our ARD patients to postpone their treatment, not to get pregnant, because the evidence is not yet clear. And in fact, there were 2 cases reported I think a week ago from China itself, that the babies had, after 2 hours of birth, they had IgM positive. And you know that the IgM takes a little longer to appear. So there must have been some in utero transmission of infection. So that the jury is still out because the number of cases are less. But those are the only 2 patients which have shown that could be in utero. The rest of, there is a case series of 34 patients from US, which says that the pregnant women, if they have COVID infection, they respond beautifully. They don't respond anything worse as compared to a normal patient. So at the moment, we are not advising people not to marry and not to have babies.
And what about people who says, if I'm doing a teleconsult, how do I measure the fetal heart rate?
Today, the fetal heart rate monitors are available in the market, and you can just buy one and pick it up, and the doctor can teach you. We can teach you on the screen, where to put it and exactly how to hear it. It's totally available.
So how much does it cost?
Old stethoscope is also there. I really don't know. Sorry, Dr. Agarwal.
So if it is costly, doctor can buy and rent it out to their patients.
Absolutely.
And if it is cost effective, patients can buy of their own than to go to the hospital.
It's not very expensive. It's a very small device.
So this says that a lady is now going for a delivery.
Yeah.
And should she, before she is admitted, couple of days before, should she go for a COVID test? So that the hospital doesn't turn her away at the last moment.
That is a big problem which all of us gynecologists are facing, those who don't have their own nursing homes. That we are trying, most of the hospitals are demanding for a COVID test. But the ICMR's latest guidelines which have come is that only if the patient has symptoms, she has a history of contact, or she is coming from the hot spots, then you need to do a COVID, otherwise you don't need to. And the last slide which I put up about instructions, if it's a COVID positive patient, I think we have to change our whole mindset. Till the tests are freely available, we have to treat each patient as potentially infected. And that's what we are doing now in Bombay. We're using PPEs for any cesareans that we do or normal deliveries, and the entire staff is given that PPE. So somehow or the other, we will have to change our thought process and change our way of practice.
Say, I'm opening my Arogya Setu.
Yeah.
And I'm reading out 3 users diagnosed COVID-19 positive, 5 users identified at risk. They have a contact with those 3 patients. For 16 patients, users self-assessed as unwell. So 3 users within 1 kilometer area would mean that I am a high risk. So therefore, any pregnant lady, and if she is on a Arogya Setu, and she finds out that within 1 kilometer area, there are some people who are COVID positive, I think the hospital will definitely like to do a test on them, because Arogya Setu is the one promoted by the government, that in your vicinity of 1 kilometer. 1 kilometer means it's the same shop, the same grocery shop, the same bank, the same the milkman. So you have a common area. Therefore,
everyone will have to do it.
I know, but then if you are in a 1 kilometer area, suppose you say your 1 kilometer area is safe. So what I am doing now is, if somebody is coming, suppose some electrician is coming to me. If I'm hiring some electrician, so I first ask him, send me a screenshot of Arogya Setu. How many people there are in the 1 kilometer area? And if even if one patient is there, I don't hire them.
Right.
So I hire a person who is living in a place with the COVID-free 1 kilometer area. It's your choice.
Right.
So similarly, if a hospital's choice, if a hospital says that you are coming from an area where 1 kilometer all around you are COVID positive patients, we are going to do your COVID test before your pregnancy is taken. Whatever are the guidelines are different. Because guidelines are general guidelines.
Yeah.
But this is a specific situation. When you say I'm in a hot spot, then every case needs to have a COVID testing done.
But even healthcare workers, Dr. Agarwal, it's endless. I mean, the healthcare workers also are staying in and around those areas. So it's really
But
tough.
don't you do a hemoglobin in everybody?
Of course we do it.
Then who stops you? The question is availability of the test.
Availability of the test.
And sooner or later, government is going to make it open.
Yeah.
That you can import it anywhere you want.
No, now Bombay has private labs which are doing the tests.
So, I know, but that's again controlled by the ICMR.
Okay.
So what I am going to say is a time is going to come when labs have to do it like a hemoglobin. For doing a hemoglobin or HIV, you don't require ICMR permission.
No, it is going to become a necessity, meaning the Triple H plus COVID. At least till we get immunized or vaccines are released.
See, I don't think so that we are worried about the vaccine.
No.
The last pandemic came in 2009, which was H1N1. And till today, the vaccine is not in the government program.
Yeah.
Till today, the vaccine is more than 1,000 rupees. Till today, vaccine is not available even to the healthcare workers. So do you think that a vaccine which will be costing 1,000 rupees, government of India will put it down to 170 crore people?
Isn't this more infectious? Don't you think they should do it?
We don't know. We don't know how effective it will be. We don't know, like a polio, we have a vaccine-induced polio. Maybe that the incidence of vaccine-induced COVID may be much higher unless they do a trial, unless there is a post surveillance. I don't know. So vaccine is a possibility, yes, for a herd immunity. But I don't think so. We are going to have that. Oh, vaccine is coming. Therefore, the answer today's vaccine is physical distancing.
Okay.
Today's the vaccine is only physical distancing. I was analyzing a data yesterday, and we found out that all those areas which have a high density level, number of cases are high. So it all depends upon number of cases and number of social distancing. Physical distancing is the only answer. While doing sonography, what precautions I take, and how patients are completely hiding their all three modes of history. So what to do? Should COVID testing be done? That we have done it. Ma'am, from where do we get self-declaration forms and triage forms? She's going to send us the copy. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, I will send you a copy.
Bleeding fibroid resulting in aneemia, hemoglobin of 7. Should we go ahead with surgery?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Hemoglobin 7 and bleeding fibroid.
Oh, wow. I think this kind of a case will need surgery, and we will have to first build up a hemoglobin and then plan the surgery. The laparoscopy at the moment is a no-no in this situation. So maybe hysterectomy under spinal anesthesia would be a good option.
And then sonography precautions.
Yeah, sonography precautions are very, very important. I think you have to follow the same. The problem with sonography are there are small rooms, one single room, etc. So I think we'll have to make the rooms a little bigger. And the same thing like an, consulting room precautions like triage over the phone, give appointments at 30 to 35 minutes. All patients should be wearing masks, okay, when they enter your clinic, and all the, you have to clean the bench, you have to clean the bed, the sonography probe needs to be cleaned properly. So all those precautions you'll have to take. And also whatever you dispose has to be disposed of properly in the particular bags, and your healthcare workers also need the protective gear.
So all my viewers, news to share, and that coronavirus pandemic live updates. Lockdown extended for 2 weeks beyond May 4 as death toll rises to 1152. So they have extended the lockdown for 2 more weeks.
Yes. Oh, Mr. Modi only has
Yes, this is just now a flash of the news that we will continue our telemedicine conferences for 2 more weeks. And people can practice in these 2 weeks only. Healthcare workers slowly should start becoming normal as far as possible.
Dr. K.K. Agarwal, have you read the Swedish model which is there? Have you come across that?
Tell me what that?
The Swedish model is they have not done any lockdown.
Yes.
They've just kept it open. They said one child was, had parents who were in abroad when he came back and he didn't infect the school. So they're saying infectivity is very low in children. So they've kept everything running, except that they've protected the older age group people and the younger.
When I talked to the Swedish Medical Association president,
Yeah.
and I also spoke to the German Medical Association, both of them said that we have done elderly lockdown. This is called elderly lockdown.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been writing about it, that these two countries, this is what we have proposed, that Modi ji should de-lock and do an elderly lockdown. Whenever you de-lock, you have to do an elderly lockdown, and that has to be done by an individual people, because you have to save yourself. Say, for example, I'm 60 plus. I'm taking my precautions because I'm doing most of my teaching on the net or seeing patients on the net. I don't want to take any risk. And I asked this question to the WHO way back 2 months back. I said, what about 60 plus people who are doctors?
Right.
They say they need to protect themselves. I said, what about the medical ethics? Because they can't say no as far as MCI is concerned. And then they brought back the WMA ethics, which is a declaration of Geneva, and which clearly says, take care of your health first. And MCI says that you can say no to anybody if you say, I don't know about this disease. So there is so therefore charity begins at home. So people like me are totally 6 to 8 hours. I'm doing education every day. I'm interacting every day. Yeah. Even after this session, I'm continuing with another 2 hours. Wow. So since morning, I started my session today at 10 o'clock. Still, I'm sitting on the same seat, and I'm going to finish at 8:30 at happening every day. So I'm working much more than what I was working before, but with the telemedicine.
I think you're an amazing personality. We should take inspiration from you, the energy that you have. The only thing that I feel is this lockdown has helped us create the infrastructure. We were the primary healthcare centers, and creating more ventilators has given us time to create that kind of infrastructure. If we hit a kind of like a major wave after the lockdown, we will be able to handle the serious patients. I don't know. I think it's quite.
And one more thing is, it has given us time to learn. And the basic learning is in Italy, when number of people were dying, thousands of deaths in one church, the body is lying. And suddenly they realized that they are short of ventilators. So they stopped using ventilators. And when they stopped using ventilators in new patients, the mortality reduced.
Oh.
And then they realized that they were over-treating with ventilators. And now we have come back that it is not a ventilator problem. It is more of a thrombo-inflammatory problem. So that's all for today. Let me say thank you to you, Nandita. And nice to hear you. Nice to come back to you. And people say don't have face-to-face meeting, but on virtual meeting you can have a face-to-face meeting. So it's not necessary. And even if it looks like it is a social distancing, not a physical distancing, you are miles away, but still you are less than 3 feet in front of me. Absolutely. With that. So thank you very much, all our viewers who have been here since morning. And we will, we say Corona Namaste to you, Corona Namaste to Nandita ji. We will be back with another third hour international conference on COVID in the first week of June. Thank you very much. Corona Namaste.